There's a sound I'll never forget. The metallic roar of a truck slamming full speed into solid steel, followed by the hiss of steam and the thud of an airbag exploding. When the dust settled, the HOA president's patrol vehicle sat crippled on my driveway, smoke curling from the hood, and my mailbox, my glorious, concrete, reinforced creation, stood untouched. That was the moment everything changed. The day her petty little war finally collapsed under its own arrogance. I live on the edge of what they like to call Cypress Ridge Estates. Don't let the name fool you. It's mostly dry Texas brush and stubborn mesquite. But it came with a homeowners association and a self-appointed queen. Our HOA president, Martha Jennings. Picture a short woman in her late 50s with a tight blonde bun, crisp khaki shirt tucked into high-waisted shorts, and that permanent squint of someone who thinks the world's never living up to her standards. She drove a beige Ford F-150 with flashing amber lights bolted on top. She called it the community patrol vehicle. Everyone else called it Martha's Monster. She took her job so seriously you'd think she was guarding Fort Knox, not a handful of dusty ranch lots. My trouble started with something small, a dented mailbox. It stood at the end of my gravel driveway. Nothing fancy, just a standard metal box on a wooden post. One morning I found the door bent. The flags snapped off, tire marks cutting across the ditch. I fixed it up, shrugged it off. But a week later, the whole thing was flattened, pole cracked, metal twisted. I replaced it again, this time reinforced with concrete. That one lasted 9 days, then another. Gone. By the 4th time. I wasn't even angry. I was calculating. Every time I rebuilt, I'd find the same thing. Wide tire tracks and a smear of beige paint. Beige, like Martha's truck. I called the HOA office, which, for the record, was just her converted garage with a folding table and an American flag. She called me back with that fake sugar tone she used when she was about to say something condescending. Oh, such a shame. Dear, these country roads can be dangerous. Maybe some reckless kids? You should really replace that mailbox quickly. We wouldn't want the neighborhood to look neglected. I hung up, jaw tight. That "we" hit harder than the truck ever could. I started keeping a log, photos, dates, measurements of the tire tracks. I even caught her driving past my house every morning like clockwork, slowing just enough to make my skin crawl. My wife told me, "Don't let her get to you. She's just miserable." I wanted to believe that. But the truth was, she enjoyed this. She liked having power, even if it was just the power to ruin a man's mailbox. Then, one morning, I caught something. My old wildlife camera, grainy as it was, captured her truck swerving toward the shoulder, right where my mailbox used to stand. Not the impact itself, but close enough to prove intent. That was all I needed to confront her. She was standing by the community board, lecturing an old neighbor about the approved shade of beige for garden ornaments. I walked right up and held my phone out. "Recognize this?" She squinted at the blurry footage. "Looks like a truck on a road," she said flatly. "That's your truck," I told her. Right before my mailbox got crushed, again. Her face turned red. "Maybe if you didn't put it halfway into the lane, it wouldn't keep getting hit. I'm tired of your flimsy setup making the whole area look bad." Flimsy. That word stuck like a burr in my mind. I turned away, hearing her voice fade behind me, but inside me, something shifted, cold, deliberate, almost peaceful. If she wanted to wage war on my mailbox, then I was going to give her a battle she'd never forget. That night, I sat in my workshop, sketching. My tools clanged, sparks flew, and for the first time in weeks, I felt focused. But somewhere around midnight, my wife came in quietly, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Don't let this consume you," she said. "She's not worth it." I paused, looking at my blueprints. She was right. This was madness. I was letting a bitter old woman drag me into her chaos. Maybe I was overreacting. For a few hours, I even thought about dropping it. But then I remembered every time I stood there in the sun, picking up twisted metal, while she drove by smiling. And I realized something. This wasn't about a mailbox anymore. It was about standing up to a bully. I pulled out the HOA rules, page by page. Every clause about exterior structures, and then the official USPS regulations for mailbox standards. Nothing said I couldn't make it strong. It only said it must be in good repair and easily accessible. Nothing about maximum durability. Perfect. So I got to work. My new mailbox wasn't just sturdy, it was practically indestructible. A 6-inch steel well, casing pipe sunk 4 feet into the ground, surrounded by nearly a yard of concrete. On top, a heavy gauge steel box welded directly to a thick mounting plate, painted matte black. It looked ordinary, maybe a little overbuilt, but nothing suspicious. Inside, though, it was a fortress. I called it the Sentinel. My neighbor Joe, a retired trucker with no love for the HOA, wandered over as I was finishing. "Son," he said, whistling low, "that ain't a mailbox. That's an act of revenge." I laughed. Let's just say it's a solution with staying power. I even had the local postmistress come out to inspect it. She kicked it once, gave a small nod, and said, "Well, nobody's knocking that over." Her knowing grin told me she understood exactly what was going on. Then, the waiting began. Martha's beige truck passed every few days, slowing near the driveway. I'd see her squint at the new box, suspicion flickering. Sometimes she'd smirk. Sometimes she'd roll her window down, pretending to inspect the road. One morning, she even called out, "Another new mailbox, huh? Let's hope this one lasts." "Let's hope," I said, smiling back. She had no idea she was about to collide with the law of physics and lose. 10 days later, it happened. The sun was brutal that morning, the kind of Texas heat that shimmers above the pavement. I was out front, pretending to weed, cameras set up and recording. At 10:32 a.m., I heard it, the low growl of her F-150 rolling down the road. I didn't look up, just waited. As she neared my driveway, she drifted right, the same slow, deliberate move she'd done every time. The front tire slid off the asphalt, right toward the mailbox. Then, boom! The sound was violent and final. The front end of her truck crumpled like paper. The hood popped. The airbag exploded. The Sentinel didn't budge an inch. I dropped my rake and walked toward her, keeping my phone recording. She stumbled out, face powdered with airbag dust, staring at the wreck like she couldn't believe it. Her precious patrol truck, totaled. "Martha, you all right?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Looks like you hit my mailbox." She spun toward me, furious. You trapped me. This thing's a hazard. I'll sue you for damages." I gestured calmly at the mailbox. USPS, approved height, distance, all compliant. Been here for weeks. You just left your lane and hit it. I've got the footage. By then, neighbors had started gathering. Joe was there, grinning like it was the 4th of July. A few others stood back, phones out, whispering. Martha looked around, realization dawning that she had an audience. Her rage turned into something else, Fear. When the sheriff's deputy showed up, Martha immediately launched into a wild story that I'd hidden a steel trap disguised as a mailbox, that I'd engineered it to cause harm. The deputy, a calm young woman, just nodded, measured the box, took photos, then walked back, shaking her head. "Ma'am," she said, "this mailbox is fully compliant. Looks like a single vehicle accident to me. Failure to maintain control." Martha's mouth opened, then closed again. The deputy handed her a citation, a traffic ticket, right there beside her wrecked truck. The crowd didn't laugh, but the silence said everything. For the first time since I'd moved to Cypress Ridge, Martha didn't look powerful. She looked small, standing in the dust beside the ruin of her ego on 4 bent tires. 2 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited. Of course, but Joe's wife was friends with one of the board members. Word got back to me fast. Martha had tried to spin the story, demanding they make me remove the death trap. But before the meeting, every board member received a neatly labeled folder from me. Inside, photos of every destroyed mailbox, timestamps, tire, track comparisons, the wildlife footage of her swerving, and a polite letter from my cousin, who happened to be a property lawyer. The message was simple. Any further harassment or attempt to remove my legal mailbox would result in a lawsuit. According to Joe, the room went dead quiet. The board voted to drop the issue entirely. And then came the kicker. Since Martha had been using her personal truck for HOA patrols, the HOA's insurance wouldn't cover the damage. She had to pay every cent of the repairs herself. Thousands of dollars gone, just like that. Within a month, she stepped down from her position. Officially, it was for health reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew she'd been humiliated. The new head of the safety committee was a retired botanist who spent her days planting wildflowers instead of writing citations. The neighborhood relaxed for the first time in years. People waved at each other again. As for me, I still have the Sentinel. Every morning when I check the mail, I run my hand over the cool black steel, perfectly unmarked, still standing as straight as the day I built it. Sometimes I catch myself smiling, not out of spite, but satisfaction. I didn't scream, I didn't fight dirty, and I didn't stoop to her level. I just built something that told the truth louder than words ever could. Funny thing is, Martha still drives past sometimes, in a new, smaller car this time, and she slows down just enough to stare at that mailbox. Then she speeds up again, not daring to look me in the eye. And every time I hear that engine fade into the distance, I think the same thing. Sometimes justice doesn't come from yelling or arguing. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground, literally.